You don't need me to tell you that Vermont is very often the trendsetter, and the reason why it's a trendsetter is because it has a lot of small communities. It has town meetings. They can pass resolutions. Many of the communities are human scale. You're not surrounded by huge skyscrapers, and you have a lot of green country around you. All this tends to stimulate more independent thinking and tends to assert the great concept of citizenship, which is really the fundamental firmament of our democratic society. I grew up in Connecticut. We had the town meeting form of government, but I think you've used it more in a more sustainable way than almost any other state in New England has. The students here can be forewarned, as Dan did, and I'm sure Tom Herman did. This is no time for an apathetic generation. Your forebears in the 60s and early 70s took on the Vietnam War, took on the violations of civil rights in the South. They made environment a political issue of front rank with Earth Day 1970. 1,500 campuses had events in the early April, in April of 1970. It was on the late evening news. It was Time Newsweek cover. You want to ask yourself, when is your generation, with a few exceptions, going to put your arm to the wheel of justice? There are those among you who do, but as you know, most of you don't. And you're the ones who have the greatest stake in our country because of your young age. You've got about 15,000 days or a little over 2,000 weeks before you turn 65. And last week went pretty quickly. You haven't seen anything yet. Your 20s are your most dynamic, creative decade. You'll have more judgment and experience later, you hope. But it's the 20s when you're going to decide the vector of your life's work, the kind of mark you're going to make on the world, on a nation, on your state, and on your community, and on your neighborhood. And don't waste it. Don't waste it trying to get over personal hang-ups that you should have taken care of in your teenage years. I don't want to elaborate on that. You know what I'm talking about. Make the most of it. And that means you've got to raise your expectation level. If you don't raise your expectation level about what you think the political system in this country should deliver for this country and its relations around the world, nothing will follow. Once you raise your expectation level, then you are more likely to devote the time, energy, and skill to get it done. I want to ask the students in this audience 3 questions. How many of you have never been at a shopping mall or at a McDonald's or at a Walmart? Never. Please look around. Now I'll ask you another question. How many of you have never been at a city council meeting or a town meeting or a court of law as a spectator? How many? Never been in a court of law. Right? Can I see the hands? Okay. Now you're in the commercial arena because you want to buy things that you need or want. The civic arena, you're absent from, for the most part. It's the civic arena that's going to build this country's level of justice and opportunity. It's the civic arena and how it affects the political arena and who you vote for and how they behave if they win elections. That's going to determine whether commercial values are going to be supreme over human rights, civic values, labor values, consumer values, environmental values. And if you ask yourself, why are you spending so little time observing our courts of law, observing our city councils, our town meetings, little time marching, rallying, neighborhood gatherings? If you ask yourself why, You're on your way to first base in terms of reordering your priorities a bit and the way you spend your time, your talent, and your skills. Remember your forebears and what they did in the 60s and early 70s and what they achieved. If you have civic skill courses at the University of Vermont, you're going to be able to connect classroom with the analysis of community injustices and problems and solutions in a way that synthesize your social sciences, humanities, and physical sciences. If you don't have citizen skill courses, if you have the usual panorama of courses in accounting, computer science, software development, marketing, advertising, business management, which I'm sure you do have, you've got an educational system that's not preparing you for empirical engagement in practicing democracy. It prepares you to make excuses for yourself and inflate the opposition to your dreams as if they are not overcomable. And they are overcomable. The word corporation does not exist in our Constitution. The phrase political parties does not exist in our Constitution. Why are we dominated by corporations and a two-party duopoly with a winner-take-all, money-saturated political system? Because we've let it happen. What are the first three words of the U.S. Constitution? Not we the corporation. It's we the people. And as Dan and others have said, if we don't organize, and you can start by taking over Congress with 2,000 people in every congressional district, which has about 630,000 people. Every congressional district has colleges and universities, 1, 2, 3, whatever. 2,000 people organized in a very tight citizen watchdog group on Congress, proposing, say, 10 redirections of our country, single-payer health insurance, which the corporations don't want, but the people do, living wage, which McDonald's and Kmart and Walmart don't want, but the people want, reducing the bloated military budget, redirecting our foreign policy in the Middle East, which a majority of the people want, cracking down on corporate crime, fraud and abuse with vigorous prosecutorial resources that a majority of the people certainly want, a massive transformation of our energy into energy efficiency, solar energy and geothermal, which a majority of the people want, opening up the presidential debates, which a majority of the people want, including wanting me on the presidential debates in 2000, 2004. I understand that that was a very spacious debate stage the other night. Right? There's plenty of room for more than two. That if you organize these, look what it takes. 2,000 people as determined as serious bird watchers to watch Congress. Have you ever met a serious bird watcher? Up at dawn, into the marshes, cameras, gloves, pen, pad, cell phone, 3 sightings, 6 sightings. Healthy. It's a healthy hobby. But we don't have a fraction of the Congress watchers. And if these 2,000 people in every congressional district focus on 535 men and women in Congress who put their shoes on the way you and I do, and on the 1,500 or so corporations who get their way with a majority of 535 men and women who are supposed to represent you, not corporations, you'll transform Congress, and in 18 months, you will get a lot of these changes that have been overdue for years, like single-payer health insurance, through. What is required is that 2,000 people pledge 200 serious volunteer hours a year each, pledge to raise $200 each, put the money to open 2 offices in each congressional district with 2 full-time staff to provide the continuity week after week. Then you put 10 major platform issues. I'd like you to do the Nader Gonzalez platform issues. You can see it on our website, hitting the issues button. You'll see what's on our table, which is off the table for McCain and for Obama. and corporate candidates as they are. And you will raise the level of self-confidence of people everywhere, and you will succeed because you are representing what Lincoln once called the public sentiment of our times. He said, with public sentiment, anything can be done. Without public sentiment, nothing can be done. And that's another phrase for the majority of the people behind these proposals. How many of you would be interested in that? Okay. Why not? Is anybody able to stop you from doing it? When you decide to do something about change in our country, the worst thing you can do is start listing all the insuperable obstacles of the corporate powers and their government allies. You should first ask yourself, as I'm sure some of you do, you wouldn't be here tonight if you weren't civic activists, what is it that we can do that no one can stop us from doing? No one can stop us from marching, no one can stop us from rallying, no one can stop us from going to city council meetings, no one can stop us from voting for people who we believe in instead of being narrowly pushed into the least worst vote, the tactical vote, the vote that ensures that both parties will get worse every 4 years because they don't have to worry about you. The minute you give them your least worst vote, you've lost your bargaining power. But the corporations are pulling 24/7 in their direction, and liberals and progressives are not pulling on John Kerry or Al Gore or Barack Obama because they're so freaked out by the Republicans, they give these Democrats a free ride. And if you give them a free ride, they'll oblige you. They won't even look back. They won't give you anything. You got to make your vote hard to get. No matter who you vote for, you've got to make your vote hard to get and condition your vote, because that's what all these commercial interests do. So ask yourself, what can you do that no one can stop you from doing? And you'll be at second base. Half of democracy is just showing up. How many times have you had to call people and beg them just to show up, to deal with their own grievances, not the ones you think they have, their own perceived grievances that they've grumbled about? And how hard it is to get people away from their television set, away from their iPod, away from the electronic gadgetry that plunges us into hour after hour in virtual reality and separates us from reality. I was at my hometown in Winsted yesterday, and we had Oktoberfest, and I had a big table, and we give away books. I give away books. John D. Rockefeller gave away dimes. I give away books. And high school students from my old high school would come up, and they looked at all these books, great variety of books, and they said to me, "Who reads anymore? It's all the internet. You don't need books." Well, at least they didn't say they're not turned on to politics, so I could tell them, keep saying that. You're not turned on to politics? Read history. When people in any society don't turn on to politics, politics turns on them in a very disagreeable way.